Alright, so in this first video, we're going to be looking at a single linked list. We're going to be doing it in the console. I do have a set of videos that do the exact same thing in sort of Unity, but this is nice because it helps you focus just on the, um, the code rather than having to fiddle with Unity's interface and game objects and stuff like that. Alright, so what we're looking for is this right here. It says console app.net, Windows, so forth. Go ahead and click on that and hit next. I normally just name the ones where I'm fiddling around play, but for this one, we're just going to name it linked list, and we'll name it singly linked list. And I'm going to go ahead, or actually, you know what? Let's name the whole project algorithms. Go ahead and hit create. All right, so over on the side here, if you don't see it, go to Window, or I'm sorry, View, and go down and look for Solution Explorer. Let's bring this out a little bit. Now, here's my algorithms. I want to right click on this and do Set Up as Startup Project. This is the first one we're working in. Alright, so for my namespace here, I have algorithms. I'm actually going to change this namespace to S linked list and go ahead and save that. Now the reason for this is because when we go forward, I want to show you how to create, we're going to talk about stacks and queues and other types of data structures and how they relate to algorithms. So above my class program, I'm going to make another class here. So I'm going to type class node and space that out a little bit. Now within linked lists, you want to think of, if you're familiar with arrays, each box or element in this is considered a node. And each node will point to the next one, to the next element. Now with a single linked list, we don't store the data to back and forth. This is just a single linked list. It runs in order. And so it's good to learn about this type of linked list first. So the type of information that this node is going to store is an integer. Oops. So let's go ahead and type int, and I'm just going to name that data. Now the recursive, which means the item that allows it to select itself, is we're going to, let's make this public for now. We're going to do the same with the next one. We're going to make a public object of node. We're going to call it next. And so what this allows it to do is this object here will point to the next element, and we're going to store a reference to whatever our next element is. You'll see that as we begin to code it. To help with that, we're going to make a public method called print data. Now what this is going to help us do is within this, we're just going to console write out. So the data that's stored within that. So we're just going to print out to the screen so we know what data is being done, is being printed. All right, so I'm going to shrink this down and this as well. And then below this, I'm going to make another class called single linked list. And within this class, we're going to make a method that uses the class node itself. So let's go ahead and enter on this. And we're going to create our first node, so private node first. Now what I want to check is the first element empty. So public, and we'll make it type bool, and I'm going to call this is empty. And I'm just going to return we need to return a Boolean object. So we're going to check that right now. Actually, we can just do, instead of writing an if statement, we can just say if first, that's this node here, is the same as null, it'll return is empty. All right, so below this, what I'm going to do is we need to actually insert something into our first one. So we're going to make a public variable called, or public method called insert first. And the data that we're going to insert in is, as you probably guessed it, it's an integer data, which, remember we made this here, so I can copy this. And actually, we'll just type it out into data. So we're going to pass in the data into our first value. Now we want to access this node up here, or our node class, and we want to insert data into data. So we need to create a new node. So node, and then we can give our node a name. Call it new node equals new node, and then when we can go to new node dot data and make that equal to data. And what this data is this is a new node that we created that has access to data. So it made a new node object, which is up here, and we have given it access to data and the data we're inserting in. Later, we'll do a little bit more with getters and setters to protect all this, but this is more for clarification. Now, what we need to do is with this new node, because we have data in it now, we need to have it point to first. So next equals first, and now first equals new node. Now this might seem a little complicated, so let's go through this. We made a new node. New node can access the data field here, right? So we made a new node and we're grabbing data. We're assigning it whatever's being passed in. So say we're passing in 5. So now this the new node's data equals 5. And we want new node next pointing to first, right? Because now it's first in line. And then we're setting first to our new node. All right, so let's make another one. We have a public void insert first. What we want to do is delete the node, delete a node. So public, we're going to do type node, and we're going to call this delete node. And what I want to do is, come on, let's make a new node called temp. This is going to store our current node. We'll make that equal to first. So we're holding whatever our first one is. Let's do return temp just so that we get rid of the squiggly line. So now we have a temporary node that's just storing whatever data wherever we're at in the node spot. So here's first. Now we need to, now that node temp equals first. Now remember we made a node up here called first. See, private node first. So what we can do is, in here we can say first equals, and we want to assign it the next nodes. First dot next. So that might seem a little convoluted, so I'm going to take some extra time here to go ahead and comment all this out. So this is the data we are storing in our node. This is this node is going to monitor where we are, where our next node is. Here we print what is in our node. This will store the first node position. Here we will check if our node is empty. If so, we return that it is null. Here we can insert our data into the first node, create a new node. Here we set the data of our new node. Here we set next to first because we do not have a next yet. Here we are setting first to the new node. We are storing the first location in a temporary place. Before we reassign it. Here first is set to next. So we're deleting the node. We're storing what's inside of first temporarily. First equals first.next. So we're moving its position, which is actually deleting the nodes, and then we return temp. By returning temp, we return whatever stored in that first thing. All right. In the next video, we'll continue on.